So this is the Lunchroom hosted stream for just affiliate best practices. Figured we saw a whole bunch of folks who got into the affiliate program. We're really excited because they were able to get bits, now subs, and we wanted to talk about some good ideas for what you can do as an affiliate to not get yourself screwed. I figured, not get yourself screwed was an important criteria. So let's get started. I think the first and biggest thing for me to cover is really just you have to decide whether or not your affiliate stuff is, whether your streaming is a hobby or do you intend for it to be a business. And throughout this whole thing, ask me questions, please. It's nicer if I'm actually answering questions as opposed to just blathering on myself. So your first step is to decide whether or not you intend your stream to be a hobby or a business. The reason I say that is because the IRS cares. I don't care. You can do things however the hell you want. But the IRS really cares about whether or not you intend to make a profit with what you're doing on an ongoing basis. So, and that's of course, IRS, that's of course the US. So, the main difference is, I'd say, your mindset. Is this something that you do when you feel like it? You're happy if you earn a couple bucks. You might spend a little bit of that money to, improve what you're doing. Or are you actually focused, setting a consistent schedule, looking to improve, looking to grow, hopefully eventually be a major source of your income? And that's not easy to decide, and that's not something that anyone else can decide for you, right? It takes a lot of time to build up your stream into something that's actually profitable first, and second, that it actually, earns some sort of significant income. Hey, Resorty, how's it going? So anyways, like I said, ask questions. I can ramble on for forever, but if you've got questions, let me know. Right now, the topic's Twitch affiliates best practices, but I'll take questions sort of across the spectrum. So when I'm talking about the difference between hobby and business, like I said, it's that mindset piece and it's the growth approach piece, but then it's also how do you approach the different documentation that you do. So if you're doing a hobby, if you're doing it as a hobby, you don't really need to be super specific about tracking exactly everything that you make because it'll be primarily coming from Twitch, right? You'll be getting potentially subs, potentially bits. They'll have a report. They'll show you that everything you made. You don't really need to worry too much about it. And since you aren't planning for a ton of growth, you also don't really need to worry about quarterly taxes. Like, that's a thing that you have to pay in the US if you're going to make a decent amount of money from some sort of self-employment. But if you're not ever planning on doing that, you probably won't ever reach the threshold where it's really necessary. However, if you're planning on actually making a business, you should start today if you're small, and you should have started yesterday if you're not small, on doing the different tracking that you need to do. So the first tracking piece that I think is super important is just your basic income and expenses, right? For the business. So your income, everything that you've earned, from whatever source it is, if you use GameWisp, if you got some subs, if you have bits, if people have tipped you through PayPal or something like that, you want to have one central place where you're tracking all of that so that you can see what you're earning, and that can help you make really good decisions on how you're going to move forward with your business. The second piece is that expense piece, and the reason that's relevant is because when you're someone who owns a business, when you're self-employed in any level, even just the I'm earning a couple bucks from Twitch per month but planning to grow it, those expenses that are ordinary and necessary for the business, so this microphone, this camera, things that I wouldn't have except for the actual, I wouldn't actually have except for the fact that I'm running a business, those things actually reduce my taxes. So the way that you get taxed in the US is everything that you earn gets added up. And then, if you're a business owner, everything you earn gets added up, right? And that's all those different sources. That's a job you're working. That's if you went out and mowed lawns, drove for Uber. That's if you earned anything from Twitch. or YouTube or anything like that. And once that's all added up, you don't actually pay taxes on that amount. You get a whole bunch of things that you can use to reduce that amount, so you pay less in taxes. As a business owner, the biggest thing that you can reduce is your business expenses. So I saw Resorti had a question. Just a sec. Gotcha. So yeah, Resorti, that's actually a really, really good question. So it's, if I buy a game that I play on stream, but then also play off stream, is it still a business expense, and how does that work? That's fuzzy, right? So yes, if it's a game that you play on stream that you bought with the intent to use it to earn you income, but then you also have personal use for, you technically, what you should do is only expense the percent of the cost that equals the expense that the percent that you use for business. So it's kind of weird, right? Like, I don't really keep track of like the games that I play on stream, which, I mean, I'm running it as a hobby, the stream, not a business, but I don't really keep track of like the percent that's on stream versus off stream, but technically that's what you should do, and then only expense that portion of it. A really common example of this is people who buys, God, if only I could English, people who buy cars for the business and then also drive them outside of the business. Technically you're supposed to split it. In reality, you're probably not going to get dinged on that, I'd say. As long as the intent for buying it was to conduct business, and it's something like a $60 game, they're not going to really nail you on that. Especially earlier on. If you were buying thousands of dollars of games or in-game items and things like that, then they might do it. But yeah, I wouldn't say just don't game off stream exactly. No, I don't think that's exactly the answer. But so technically that's how you should do it. Practically, you can probably just write off the whole thing. That's a really cool thing actually about being a business owner who is a streamer, meaning that you do something that you enjoy anyways for business. The really cool thing about it is that a lot of those things that you might get otherwise are now business expenses. Which means you functionally get a discount on them, right? If you're, to use an easier example, if you're taxed at the 25% rate on any new income that you earn, and you buy a game that reduces your taxable income, you've basically gotten a 25% discount on that game, right? I know my uncle, who owns some restaurants and is in a high tax bracket as in the business, just straight up says anything that he buys for the business basically comes at a 50% discount, because of how it reduces the business's taxable income. The really important thing with both income and expenses, regardless of the type of expense, is having a system for tracking it. If you aren't tracking what you're earning and what you're spending, it's going to be just a horrible time for you when you got to do taxes. There's so much like documentation and things like that to trace down, that you'll just drive yourself nuts, basically. So definitely put in the time as you earn, as you spend, to like actually track it in the moment so that you don't hate yourself later. It's a pain in the ass. It's extra work. And like I said, it's certainly like just awesome that you can write off games, right? I know like Hearthstone streamers can write off the packs that they buy, because the packs are necessary to playing the game in an entertaining fashion. But, you know, I'm sure that they play, in fact, I know that they play off stream, right? And yeah, you could argue that they're doing it for business then. But even so, it's like, how cool is that you can write off packs? So for the tracking piece that I recommended that you do, that you really, 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 really should do if you don't want to hate yourself come tax time, there are a couple main ones that I like. The first one is FreshBooks. What are we talking about? We've been talking about some of the initial best steps you can take as an affiliate who's looking to earn some side income from this and is deciding whether or not it's something that's going to be like an ongoing part of what they do. Because you want to start early. These things don't get less complex as you get bigger, right? They get exponentially more complex, actually. So the first one, like I said, is decide whether or not you're doing a hobby or a business. The IRS has its own definitions, of course, but realistically for you, it's do you want to put in the time and effort to build it, and do you want to put in the money to build it? I'll look at that in a sec, Resorty. I saw that pop up. And that's a big question, right? Because you can, if you're running a negative the first year or so of your business, you can actually use that to reduce your taxes, which is pretty sweet. But it also sucks to be running a negative, right? The IRS won't let you get away with running a negative for forever if it's just a hobby that you're using to write off some of your income. They've caught a lot of people doing that, so you gotta watch out there. Tracking things before I get to Resorties. FreshBooks is one. QuickBooks Online is another. Xero, literally Z. It's Xero, but it's Xero. There are 3 relatively inexpensive online accounting-ish softwares that can let you pull in things automatically. If you use those and do your due diligence, that'll make your life just a crap load